Hi and welcome to Lockdown Learning with Guardians of the Deep. I'm Sally and today we are going to dive beneath the waves and explore kelp forests in South Africa. By the end of this presentation, you'll be able to answer all of these questions. This quiz, along with a number of others, can be found on the Lockdown Learning page of my website, that's scientistinlimbo.com. You can pause the video now if you'd like to make a note of these questions, or just take a photo or screenshot so that you can follow them as we move through the presentation. Kelp is a macroalgae, which means it belongs to kingdom Protista, making it neither a plant nor an animal. Kelp forests flourish in regions of upwelling, and in South Africa, this occurs along our west and south coasts. They also prefer offshore rocky reefs. Sea bamboo and split fan kelp are the two most common species in South Africa, with spine kelp and bladder kelp making up the 4 species that form the forests fringing our shores. Growing at a rate of approximately 30 millimeters per day, some kelp can obtain towering heights of 12 meters. Forests provide a sheltered habitat in which a diverse collection of species live and forage. Away from big predators and with many crevices and hidey holes, kelp forests provide perfect environments for juvenile fish and other small species. As a primary producer, just like the trees of a terrestrial forest, kelp forms the foundation of this marine food web. These dense stands also protect our coastline from the raw energy of pounding Atlantic waves and act as an important carbon sink by removing large amounts of carbon from the atmosphere. So have a look at the photo on the left. Can you name any of the parts of the kelp? Okay, we're going to start at the top. So this shaggy bit, any ideas what it's called? So these leaf-like attachments are called fronds, and they are the sites of nutrient uptake and photosynthesis. Next up is this tube-like component. It's a bit like a plant stalk or tree trunk, as it gives the kelp structural support and extends the fronds towards the sea surface. This is called a stipe. Now down below, you'll see here attached to the rock is something that looks a little bit like a root system. This is a holdfast and it anchors the algae to the substrate, but it doesn't absorb any nutrients like terrestrial root systems. Lastly, and this isn't seen in the photograph, is a nematocyst. This is a gas-filled bladder that keeps kelp buoyant and upright in the water column, and not all species have these. That's the nematocyst. So I mentioned earlier that kelp photosynthesizes, and that means that they require sunlight, and so will anchor onto relatively shallow rocky reefs to allow fronds access to the upper sunny layers of the water column. They thrive in cool temperate oceans where water temperatures range between 5 degrees and 20 degrees Celsius. As well as photosynthesizing, the fronds also take up nutrients from the surrounding water, and these nutrients are introduced to the coastal waters through upwelling. Upwelling occurs when an offshore wind blows, so that's a wind that blows from the land out to sea. In Cape Town, this mostly occurs during our summer. The southeaster blows the warmer surface water that is lower in nutrients, out to sea, and is replaced by the cold nutrient-rich waters from the depths. Locals have become familiar with the icy blue hues that are associated with upwelling, freezing toes, and numb ankles. The kelp limpet, you can see a photograph of it on the bottom right, lives on the kelp. It cleans the stipe of tiny organisms, they're called epiphytes, that if left unchecked, increases drag, which often leads to the stipe breaking from the holdfast and washing ashore. For the food web, I'm going to base it on my local kelp forest found off Long Beach in Kommetjie, and I'm going to try to keep it fairly simple. These are some of the main species that make up the ecosystem. So it's basically a case of who eats who in this forest. Can you spot the primary producer? I'll give you a hint, we've just been talking about it. And how about the consumers? So these photos include primary, secondary, and tertiary consumers. Who do you think is the apex predator? Okay, so we'll start with the primary producer. We'll work our way up. So kelp is the primary producer. The primary consumers are herbivores, so they'll be eating the kelp. How many of these do you count? So herds of sea urchin could wipe out entire stands of kelp forest. Abalone also feed off kelp. Tiny juveniles shelter between the spikes of the sea urchins. And the Cape rock crab grazes the seaweed and feeds on small animals between the leaves. Secondary consumers are carnivores or omnivores, generally eating the herbivores. So in the Cormacky kelp forest, these would include the sea stars and the west coast rock lobster. And I apologize, the only photo I have of a west coast rock lobster is a picture of it being eaten by an otter. So it's the red thing in its mouth. The west coast rock lobster plays a very important role in controlling the numbers of sea urchin, allowing the growth for the young kelp. Tertiary consumers eat the carnivores, and in this case, it would be the octopus. An apex predator is an animal that doesn't have any predators of its own. So in this localized ecosystem, so in the Cormacky kelp forest, this would be the Cape clawless otter. The crocodile and python hunt otters, but we don't have those animals in Cormacky. Well, not that I know of anyway. So otters definitely rule this ecosystem. What do you think otters eat? So their diet includes sea urchins, west coast rock lobster, octopus, crabs, and abalone. Basically all of them. As I mentioned, I've kept this food web fairly simple. So can you think of any other species that can be added? And where would they fit? What about decomposers and scavengers? And the birds? What would they eat? There's also fish and filter feeders like barnacles to think about. Every winter, large amounts of kelp get torn from the reefs and dumped onto the beach as a result of the intense storms in the region. It is here that kelp begins to fuel its second food web on the shores of our sandy beaches. Once washed ashore, kelp is decomposed, so that's broken down, by beach hoppers, sea slaters, and the larvae of kelp flies. These in turn are hunted by various shorebirds and other predators such as the formidable shore spider. This spider has a very cool way of dealing with incoming tide. It traps bubbles of air in silk-lined crevices or shells, which it uses for shelter during the high tide. What do you think a beach food web would look like if all the drift kelp was removed? What would happen to the other species? As it brings important nutrients into the beach ecosystem, it is important to leave it exactly where it is and let nature take its course. So these are a collection of some of the photographs I've taken during my trips down into the forest realm. Diving beneath the waves and exploring this incredible underwater forest is an absolutely fascinating and calming experience. Life is found flourishing beyond every frond that is pushed aside. Shoals of juvenile fish dart about in bursts of shimmering silver. Colorful urchins cram the crevices while encrusting algae blanket the rocks and boulders. The waving arms of vibrant sea anemones sway slowly with the current, and crabs scuttle across the sea floor debris of discarded shells and broken pieces. The incredible biodiversity of even just a small section can take you hours to enjoy. It's the best way to spend free time. I mean, who wouldn't enjoy spotting the elusive shy shark or the cryptic octopus? All kelp in South Africa is wild harvested, and this is because there are no kelp farms in the country. This harvesting is controlled by the Marine Living Resources Act, and it targets two of our species. That's the sea bamboo and the split fan kelp, the two most common. Alginate is extracted and used in various products. The most well-known of these products being the Kelp plant fertilizer and biostimulant. It also goes into dog food, toiletries such as toothpaste and shampoo, in pharmaceuticals, so that's medicine, and in cooking, baking, and salad dressing. There are a number of threats to the world's kelp forests. Pollution in the form of sewage, agricultural runoff, and industrial waste cloud the water, change the nutrient and chemical balances, and cause localized toxic red tides, which could lead to mass lobster walkouts. Other pollution, such as debris coming from land or ships, can destroy habitats and entangle wildlife. As food security becomes increasingly difficult to obtain with the limited terrestrial space and exponentially growing human population, overexploitation of kelp and other marine algae is a real risk. Access for mining is provided by the removal of whole kelp beds, and climate change is altering sea temperatures and increasing the intensity and frequency of storm surge. Start that again. Climate change is altering sea temperatures and the intensity and frequency of storm surges. This narrows the range in which kelp can survive and increases the occurrence of kelp removal. By removing predators such as the local West Coast rock lobster, it's already a SASSI red list species, or the endangered sea otter of the northern Pacific Ocean, will result in forests being overrun with sea urchins. Invasive species, depending on what it is, can either directly outcompete the kelp or outcompete the predators that control the number of kelp grazers, such as the sea urchin. Lastly, changes in turbidity, so that's the cloudiness of seawater, and the seabed sediments will impact photosynthesis, nutrient uptake, and the ability of sporophytes, that's little kelp, to attach to adequate surfaces. There are, however, a number of organizations and initiatives that are working to protect and better manage these vital ecosystems. So we'll start with the Benguela Current Commission. This is a joint effort between Angola, Namibia, and South Africa to protect the Benguela Current large marine ecosystem from unsustainable development and to promote the conservation, well-being, and management of this important region. The Benguela Current LME is one of the most productive marine ecosystems on Earth, and encompassing an area stretching from South Africa's Port Elizabeth to northern Angola, it is one of 5 large marine ecosystems that have been designated. South Africa's national marine protected areas protect regions of coastline and adjacent ocean and offshore open ocean for the benefit of nature and people. With a system of 41 MPAs, South Africa currently protects 5% of its ocean territory, the goal of 2030 being 30%. The key marine reserves offering protection for kelp forests in South Africa include the Gullis Bank Complex, Namaqualand and Table Mountain National Parks, and Robben Island. The Sea Change Project raises awareness for the beauty and ecological importance of South Africa's kelp forest. It aims to have the Great African Sea Forest declared a natural and cultural World Heritage Site by UNESCO, that's UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. So media projects such as the Sea Change book and the My Octopus Teacher documentary highlight the biodiversity flourishing within this vital ecosystem while contributing to the education of future ocean ambassadors. The choices that we make every day can help to protect and ensure the integrity of these underwater wonderlands. Below are a few suggestions. Don't litter. The impacts of our land-based actions are carried around the world with the ocean current. Reduce the need for single-use materials, not just single-use plastics. Reduce your carbon footprint. Participate in beach and dive cleanups and use biodegradable cleaning products. Our choices have the power to bring about positive change, so let's choose for the environment. You should now be able to answer these questions. This quiz, along with many others, as I mentioned earlier, about various ocean realms and creatures can be found on the Lockdown Learning page of my website, scientistinlimbo.com. You can learn which species can be spotted in False Bay's Kelp Forest, and you can explore the Walker Bay Forest with the South African Shark Conservancy by following these links. These links are available under Lesson 3 on the Lockdown Learning page of my website. And on this page, you'll also find a variety of activities and crafts, learning resources, all with an ocean theme. If you'd like to participate in and contribute to a citizen science project, and they range from marine subjects to terrestrial subjects, there's space subjects, and it's from all over the world. You can check out Zooniverse, sign up, and have a look, see what you're interested in. This link will also be under Lesson 3. So to end off, I have 2 activities for you. Who eats who in the forest? So build a kelp forest food web, either on paper or as a diorama. See how many different species you can include in the web, and work out how they all connect. There are many similarities and differences between kelp and terrestrial forests. So for activity 2, draw a picture of each environment and then see how many of these you can spot. All questions and drawings can be emailed to me at guardiansofthedeep@yahoo.com. Next week we'll try to find Nemo as we explore coral reefs. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this magical underwater world of life and color as much as I have. See you next week. Bye.